We're ready.
What?
I'll call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Here's there are no minutes to discuss.
Not yet.
Correct. Okay, we'll go right to new business then. And the first item is the annexation resolution, and it is a public hearing, correct?
Correct.
For that, and the mayor.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna recuse myself from any discussion or action on Ellsworth because I'm a member of the board of the Community Foundation to the owner. So I'm gonna take a seat in the audience. If not, I'm not interested.
Right. You do that?
So just I wanted to point out that up on the screen is the annexation area, which is the 1.1812 acres. The Community Foundation of Carroll County did put forward the resolution or the petition to annex. It's currently zoned R10,000 in the county. It is proposed to come in as conservation, which does match the City of Westminster and Byron's plan. So that's why it's coming in at that zoning. So it was, we have all sorts in your staff report. You can see all of the different steps that the project has taken. On April 10th, we introduced this to the Mayor and Common Council. On April 11th, we sent this to the Carroll County Department of Planning, and they sent it out to all of the different various agencies that they look at. We did receive a comment from Maryland Department of Planning. Their comment was to make sure that as this moves forward, that we make sure that everybody is notified of our public hearings. And we went to the Planning Commission of Carroll County on Tuesday, who gave a favorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to sign the comment letter that they provide to the Mayor and Common Council. And this morning, we went before the Board of County Commissioners, and they approved to sign their letter with a favorable recommendation to the Mayor and Common Council. So we, just to tell you a little bit more about this property. One of the things that I got to learn over the past week, because I had the pleasure of listening to Mr. Tom Gould talk about all the work that he's been doing in the last 14 years on the property. There's more than 180 unmarked graves that are on the site. And so he's been working to get headstones for each of the people that are buried there. In addition to that, we did learn about the history of the cemetery and talking about that the cemetery was actually purchased by 7 Black Civil War soldiers who named it after Elmer Ellsworth, who was the first person who was killed in the Civil War for the Union side. And so the amount of history that's here is unbelievable. And there was a lot more information, obviously, in your staff report, but I wasn't entirely sure how much to go into. It has been throughout this process very cut and dry. Everyone has been in favor of this annexation just because of the sheer history of it. And that it's time, as they said this morning, that it's time to bring it into the City of Westminster. We heard that on Tuesday, and we heard it on Thursday this morning. So one thing I did want to make a note of is in your staff report that there was an accidental carryover from annexation number 75 that you saw last month or the month before, talking about the people who live on the property. I just want to let you know that there isn't anyone who is currently on this property, but so I just wanted to bring that to light that there was that issue with the staff report. But there are several representatives here if you have any additional questions.
So one thing just to clarify that I think came up for mayor and council is that and one of the other reasons too for it to come into the city, correct me if I'm wrong, is it provides opportunity for certain kind of grants or certain kind of things that the cemetery might be able to obtain from funding for restoration and all that being part of the city is helpful.
So, and I'm sorry, I didn't say that, yes. So one of the things, the next step that would happen if the property were to be annexed is that we go through what's called a map amendment with the heart of the Civil War heritage area. And that would allow this property to come into that heritage area. It wasn't allowed previously because it's not part of the city. But with that designation, they would be allowed to apply for several grants, not only local grants from our chapter, but also for the state of Maryland. So you're absolutely correct. It does open up, and it's just part of the toolbox because it also will become part of the municipal priority funding area. And it's just a whole bunch of other options that become available for them for funding.
Because I mean, I think there's a historic reason why it should come into the city of Westminster, obviously. But also there's practical today
Absolutely,
reasons
yeah.
for it to come into the city of Westminster. So it's a win-win from a today's standpoint, from a practical standpoint, but also from a historical standpoint. For it to finally come into the city.
Yes, and so this is, like I said, just the first step. An annexation is just the first step of everything that needs to take place, but
Okay.
All right, now this being a public hearing, do we have a sign up sheet or anything, or is it just
we do not. So anybody who,
yes, anyone who would like to, in the public, would like to speak on behalf of
Good evening, I'm Matthew Hurth. I'm standing in for Kelly Schaefer Miller, who's been the attorney leading the drafting on this matter. I think Ms. Gerhart really summarized it very well, and just emphasizing Councilman Huff's comments that this does help really open up some doors for funding, and it's been terrific getting to know everyone associated with Ellsworth Cemetery and hearing the history. I really encourage anyone who has any further interest in talking to the representatives. I have Diane Betcher with me. She's the historical researcher here behind the effort, and Marshall Green from CLSI is also here with us this evening. But anytime you talking to Diane this evening, talking to Tom in the past, you could talk for quite a lengthy amount of time and learn something new throughout this conversation. So it's great to have the folks leading this type of charge here in Carroll County and Westminster. Thank you. And then we're here for any questions that the board has.
I'll go next, just because anytime I have an opportunity to share stories about the cemetery, I'll take advantage of it. I'm Diane Betcher, and I am the researcher, one of the volunteer members of the advisory committee for the Ellsworth Community Foundation, Carroll County. And the cemetery has interred 17 veterans of the Civil War, along with veterans of World War II and World War I. And just the amount of history, the first Black man to vote in Carroll County, Nick Fairway, is buried at Ellsworth. The first Black man to sit on a jury in Carroll County, John M. Snowden, is also buried. His sister, Mary Walker, was an educator, and she learned to read and write in the 1830s and the 1840s, taught by her father, Reverend Snowden. And following the Civil War, she helped establish a historically Black college university in San Antonio, Texas. So they sent her away to Baltimore and invited her to come establish St. Philip's College, which still exists and still an HBCU in San Antonio. So the history not only of Carroll County, of Westminster, of Maryland, but of our nation is ensconced in Ellsworth Cemetery. And we're excited to be part of Westminster going forward.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Dean Camlin. I'm actually tonight representing the Rotary Club of Bonds Meadow, who has kind of taken on the Ellsworth Cemetery as a kind of a maintenance community service project. In fact, we're going to be painting the fence there this Saturday. And we've worked on not only repairing and maintaining the fence, split rail fence around the property, but we've also worked on trying to maintain the center area where there's a flagpole and donate funds for replacing that flagpole. And we'd like to work on trying to make at least that center area accessible for ADA purposes. which also means establishing a parking space, an ADA parking space, and an accessible path to it. So I'm interested to see how this has any topography. But that you guys have maybe as part of your survey.
Hello, my name is Stephen Leone. I'm the commander of the Catholic War Veterans Post 2016, also known as Sergeant Shriver Post here in Westminster. I'm also a member of other veterans organizations, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, and the United States Submarine Veterans. So I'm all things veteran, I guess you could say. But we as veterans, I'm here on behalf of all veterans, we here believe that veterans must be buried properly. And that includes the grounds that they're on. And so if we could do something for this cemetery, if we can fund it, we can make sure it's maintained and so on. And that shows dignity towards those veterans that are there. We will support all veterans of all faiths, all backgrounds. It doesn't matter. I represent the Catholic War Veterans. That's just my group, but we support all veterans. So I'm here in support of that. And I hope that this is done, this goes forward. I'm really excited about it. And we look forward to doing some work there as well. Just a little side note, in my past, I guess a former life, if you will, I was a homicide detective in the state of Arizona with the state police. And one of my jobs was I was a cold case detective. And so my job was to identify on behalf of a national task force, the unidentified. I'll never forget a case that we had. We would go into paupers' graves, as they're called in Arizona, cemeteries, and we found a gentleman that was buried in a very, very shabby circumstance. It was a plywood box that had caved in, the vault had caved in. It was really a mess. And so we would bring him up and recreate the body bone by bone. And we had a dentist with us, and we look at the structure of the teeth and so on. We take DNA from the clavicle, and we try to identify him. But in this case, it was a gentleman who died on the streets of Phoenix, Arizona, drunk. Just someone that was, nobody. We found out that he was a Bronze Star service member. And here he was laying in a pauper's grave. It was a real sad story. So we made sure we brought him up. We had him interred at the National Cemetery, had an appropriate funeral given to him, including everything, honor guard and so on. So veterans are a special breed. If you don't believe in it, just ask one of us, we'll tell you. And thank you for your time.
You need a motion for a recommendation.
Well, I guess you're.
Yeah, you have to
Close
close
it
the
up,
hearing
close it.
first.
Gonna close the hearing.
We need a
Want me to make a
motion.
We'll make a motion. to close.
Okay. I will
All in
second.
favor?
All in favor?
Uh,
Hearing is closed. Any more discussion? Otherwise, we can petition for. Anything else we want?
I will make a motion that we forward a recommendation to the city of Westminster Mayor and Common Council for the approval of the annexation number 76.
That'll be a favorable record.
Favorable recommendation, thank you.
And I will second that.
So moving second. All in favor? Unanimous. All right. Thank you.
Fantastic.
They come back.
We don't want to hold you guys.
Okay.
We have another item on the agenda, so we will, if you all want to part, we understand that you would like to hear about our next amended plan.
Maybe. Thank you so
Thank you all
much.
for coming.
Thank you. I'm here for the amendment.
Oh, you're.
Like you.
Yeah.
Sound like they were
Mr.
trying to.
Mayor is back. You're not recusing yourself from this one.
This one is the amended plat. Carroll County Air Business Center.
Sounds like a familiar. project.
So moving on to our next item. This is to, the applicant that we have, is requesting the approval of an amended plan to enlarge the, application easement to cover the entire parcel as a result of the Carroll County Regional Airport expansion. So this is the ARC property where the ARC building currently is. And I apologize, but on this side is currently where the easement is, and as part of the airport expansion, they want to do it over the entire parcel. So that's a requirement that they have from the Carroll County government is requesting this change. And it's just, to my understanding, after talking to the Department of Development Review, it's going to be potentially one of several properties that we'll see, because there's been, the easements have been on portions of properties around there, but with the expansion, they need to have them overall. So,
Can you explain that a little bit more, just from, so because the airport is expanding, there is a easement, aviation easement that has to be on certain properties. And what exactly does that aviation easement do?
It limits development.
I'm sorry,
It would limit development, so this would essentially be in the flight path of the new airport. So essentially limit what you can build, height of
Yeah, that
buildings,
is building.
potential
Height of
development.
the easement, what's already there is fine.
Yes.
But what it does is it puts an easement on the whole property that some of the bundle of rights that you underlined have, you do not, because you have this overlay on it that limits certain things you can do because you're in the flight path.
Yeah, it wouldn't limit use, it would limit development for height of the building itself, so,
Okay.
and we do, when we get development plans like that, it does go to the county. It is sent to the county group that's responsible for the airport, they do comment on what the director of engineering about the flight path and the height of the buildings and any FAA standards that might be applicable,
Is it mainly just about the height, or
primarily about the height.
like, are there other, what are some of the other things, just out of curiosity, that come into play, or is it mainly just?
I'm not sure.
It's primarily height restrictions,
Okay,
because of, altitude of the airplanes coming in.
okay,
And even the trees, they're limited to how high they can. Correct,
so it's mainly about related to height.
correct,
Flight path.
like that.
and just.
And, I'm sorry, and it also, the property owners also are aware of the sound of the airplanes.
So just so I'm clear, so this doesn't actually subdivide the property, this puts an easement.
That's correct. And if it was, there's other properties that haven't been subdivided and platted, that they actually are impacted with just easements only, that you never see it because they're, privately taken from the property owner. But because this property and many others are recorded and platted, they are to legally go through a process of divulging that and direct plat during the amended plat process.
So are we gonna see other
Yes.
properties that are gonna come to us, which is sort of like a rubber stamp?
Yes,
Because they have to amend the plat to note the easement,
yes,
because they're platted, because if I was a meets and bounds description. They just record a easement over top of the meets and bounds and then one. Yeah, that isn't coming to us, it's because this is platted that we have to update the plat
yes.
to reflect the easement. Because there was an easement on here, but now it's bigger.
Being that there was initially a final plat that was reviewed and approved and signed off by the planning commission, any change in that final plat needs to come back to the planning commission per the ordinance.
So in this location within our municipal boundaries, we're gonna see some more of these.
Yes,
So any discussion between the owner of the property and the county, any of those arrangements, transactions, whatever they do is handled by them, we're just doing them.
yes,
Yeah, and so the.
You understand where I'm coming from, I'm sure there's something that works between everybody that.
Yeah,
typically, you're right, you wouldn't, you assume the subdivision occurring that
that there's a final plat for subdivision, but the ordinance doesn't make that distinction. It just says any final plat.
Reassembly.
Yeah, that needs to come back to the planning commission.
And also the applicant is the Carroll County Department of Public Works, so it's kind of one of their checks they have to do to make all of this work for the expansion of their.
I don't think there's much to discuss here, so with that,
Reality, I believe.
with that in mind, I'm going to move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the amended plat AP 22-094 based on the staff report provided at the May 18th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
And I second the motion.
All right, it's been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye,
Motion carries.
that was easy enough.
Painless.
I like the easy one.
Thank you. See you later.
Right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Seeing no old business. And no other county people to discuss any county business, other additional, and there any staff comments?
There's some things to keep you updated on. 7-Eleven, we're doing a final inspection for 7-Eleven, for use and occupancy. Installer, the same thing. They're finally going to, they received a temporary use and occupancy, so they had it operating, but now they've asked if it's already final to be issued. And we did sign off the demolition permit for the East Middle School. I believe June timeframe, but we're gonna check, we're gonna find out the exact time when demolition to occur. I think they're also opening up the school
June 1st.
for people that have attended the school to come and get one last visit.
One seat, can take, everyone can get a seat.
I'll tell you something about that school. When I was in high school, playing basketball, I had my very best game ever at Westminster High School before it was a middle school.
She should stop by and take notes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna take the hoop.
So I think then the new school will be ready for next,
I hope so.
I think that's what I'm hoping.
There's gonna be a tent in Camden, with kids, yes. Okay, and then we are gonna have a June meeting, I believe, right? We think we have stuff on the agenda,
It might be the state attorney's office,
and yeah,
maybe in June.
Oh,
yes.
so one comment, I'll say on the 7-Eleven. I think I wasn't around there, but the entrance improvement for the exit that comes out on the Center Street is absolutely perfect. Because that was a nightmare right there, the way it used to work. Now, as long as we don't have people trying to cut across all the lanes, but as far as limiting it to just out movements makes absolute sense.
Yeah, thank you. That took some time
Oh,
to try to configure that because the initial designs were a very small element that people could essentially just come right out and make the left-hand turn. So we really worked with 7-Eleven. They worked with us and the planning commission as well to get that to be a better design, so it does force that right turn. You can't fix everybody now. So but I think it was a much better design at the end of the day. Absolutely, yeah.
anything else from staff?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Any commissioner comment? No.
Okay.
Ready to motion to dismiss?
Move, we adjourn.
Second.